What's up, YouTube? I'm just reading Dune Messiah here. This has been my latest read. I loved the Dune movies so much that I decided I had to read the books, and so I got through the first one, and now I'm on the second one, and it gives a different experience than watching the movie. Although I will say, in the case of Dune, those new movies are incredible. I actually like them better than the book, but that's not what this video is about today. So this is another unscripted video. I know I've been doing a lot of this sort of non-Heroscape related content lately, stuff that isn't normal for my channel, but I've gotten really busy with work and with this. I have a lot of things I'm doing, a contract that I'm doing music for a TV show and working at a restaurant, and I'm writing another novel. So also still trying to promote my last novel, the first one that I put out. So lots of stuff that I'm doing. It makes it very difficult to prioritize Heroscape videos. Don't get me wrong, I love doing this channel and I love Heroscape the game, and I was doing a lot of videos for a while and seeing quite a bit of growth, but I do have other goals in my life aside from just having a successful YouTube channel. So other things take precedent, and in the meantime, I've got lots of things I'm pretty passionate about that I want to talk about. So today's topic is men no longer read. I don't know entirely, well, I think I do know what's going on here, but that's what this video's about. Men don't really read anymore. Boys don't really read anymore. And probably historically, I wouldn't be surprised to find that less men have always read than women. That's probably the case. I'm not sure. But definitely more used to read than do today. Reading today, publishing, reading books, it's a female-dominated industry right now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The publishers and all these things, they're going after the demographic that is available. And for them, it's women. So you might see this in the case of when you go to a bookstore. And generally speaking, men, if they're not reading, because there's a big wave of men's self-help books now that's pretty popular. If men do read, it seems to be things like that. I have Atomic Habits by James Clear up there. That's a perfect example of one. I also have a book by David Goggins. Things like this are very popular among men. But men, if they read fiction, historically it was sci-fi fantasy. If you were to have gone to the sci-fi fantasy aisle when I was a kid, you would have found lots of very just general stories, fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Dune, things like that. And you'll still find those there because those are the greats. They're not going to leave that section. But what you'll also find is a whole slew of romantasy, as they call it. Books that are romance novels that are basically have a fantasy skin to them, if that makes sense. They are romance novels with a fantasy flair, but yet they put them in the fantasy aisle. And this is a little strange to me because to me, I feel like they would be perfectly fine in the romance aisle, but I suppose people that want a traditional romance novel are they're gonna find it a little weird when they're reading about elves and dragons and all this stuff. But for men like me who like to read, it's a little off-putting when you go to the fantasy aisle looking for something like Lord of the Rings or Conan the Barbarian or some of this good stuff, and all you're finding is like highly emotionally driven romance, like relationship based series and novels that are fantasy. You know, it's not the sort of fantasy we're used to seeing if you look at movies or video games or things like this. I suppose in some respects, the word fantasy may describe these books very accurately, but it's just not what the genre traditionally was. It's not the type of fantasy that it used to be, where an adventurer is slaying a dragon, or maybe that is what's happening in a different sense of the phrase, if you know what I'm saying. But I don't know. This is just it's put me off, and what I have come to is I've decided there must not be a lot of men reading anymore. Now, when I was growing up, a lot of my friends, male friends, were huge readers. They would read super long books. I last year I read the whole Dark Tower series, which was suggested to me by a good friend who spent lots of time reading growing up, and many of my other friends in school also were big readers. So it's strange to see how today it just seems like the publishing industry and books and stuff, they're not being targeted towards that demographic anymore. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with these other like romantasy books or these other things. There's a place for it, and there's obviously a huge market for it. And that's not to say that men can't read those. I'm sure there's lots of men that enjoy those types of books, and that's totally fine. I just would like to see more of the sort of traditionally masculine type of story being told. I like those like core values of the character of a good man that are unfolding in a story, whether it be Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, or Roland from the Dark Tower, or plenty of different examples can be used here. That's the type of stuff I want to read. So from a selfish place in my heart, I want more of that. So that being said, I don't know. It's obvious though that the reason that it has taken this turn is because that's the market. Women are the ones reading, and women largely are the ones that like to read these types of books that they're putting out now, the sort of romantasy style books. And so, of course, the publishers are going to prioritize stories like that when they're the ones that are going viral on TikTok, that are getting they're generating lots of money, things like that. The other thing I've seen lately is writing in general has shifted. If you watch a movie from the 80s or an anime from the 90s, or if you read a novel from the early 1900s, or all these different things, and then you go and you watch an anime from today, or watch a movie from today, a novel from today, whatever it may be, there's a huge difference in the style of writing. And again, there's a place for all types of writing. There's a market for everything, but I think it's gotten really overpowering. This sort of, to be honest, I would call it like Tumblr writing, which is, those of you who are my age remember being younger, and Tumblr was a very popular thing, mostly among women. But there's a very specific sort of like fan fiction kind of writing that these people would do on Tumblr that was very similar throughout. The way the dialogue was carried out, the way that the story was told, the sort of tropes that were normal throughout these things were all sort of similar throughout. And I find that a lot of things today, whether it be movies, animation, books, they suffer, in my opinion, from that same style of writing, where to me it doesn't feel genuine. It feels very much like you can actually go and watch a lot of videos on YouTube about writing, and many people that will talk about it will sort of point to these sorts of things as how to write. Or if you take a writing class in college, they might do so as well. Now, fortunately, my college creative writing class highlighted some very, very good American authors, like for example, Flannery O'Connor, or there's some other ones, and uh, I had a very good, like, diverse sort of range of authors, and I'm not talking diverse in the sense of their gender or the color of their skin or anything like that, although there was some of that, but I'm talking more so diverse from the context of writing style. And when we're talking about writing, well, this is the true diversity that actually matters, is the diversity in approach and writing style. Today we spend so much time highlighting diversity of traits to a person that they have no control over, that being their sex or their race or etc. But this isn't diversity in writing. If you have a black woman writing, a white man writing, a Hispanic identifies as something else, whatever it may be, that doesn't mean that their writing is diverse. I know that the sort of mindset is that, oh, well, they have a different life experience, so it's diverse. But it's not diverse when they're writing in all in the similar manner. So yeah, like, the true diversity that's important here is the diversity of approach and writing style and storytelling. Whether that be all black women that write it, or all white men that write it, or all whatever it may be, this is what matters here. And I mean, that's a side tangent we don't need to go down, but yeah, I just think ultimately there is a lack of men reading today, and I think more men need to take the time to pick up a book and dive into it and exercise their imagination through reading fiction and things like that. I think there's a lot of good to come of it. Now, so back to the telling of when I was younger and all my friends were reading these huge books. Well, I was always drawn into covers. If a book had a cool cover, I would want to read it. And I would start it. I would read 10, 11 chapters maybe, and I would put it down because I would get interested by another book, and I'd pick that one up. It wasn't until I got older that I finally would sit down to actually finish a book. And I had a pretty common issue growing up of starting things and not finishing them. And I noticed this trait in other people in my life that I thought was detrimental to them. And so I made it a point to try and finish everything I start. So every book that I pick up to read, I finish that book before I start another one now. That's how I do it. And I think that as boys grow older and become men, and their brain develops, and all of these sorts of changes they go through, they should try reading again. I think that many people will find it much easier to sit down and read a book when they get older, especially if they can set aside all of the distractions of today, take an hour break from your screens and from your video games and from social media to pick up a book and just read for a bit. Now, for me, my approach to this is especially when I was starting, I would just try to read a chapter a day, which was pretty manageable. And in particular, I would do this as I was going to bed, because scrolling through your phone when you're trying to fall asleep is not helpful to falling asleep. If you pick up a book and read it, on the other hand, you're going to fall asleep pretty naturally, as a book does not deplete your melatonin the way that a screen does. So that's what I would do, and I just became a very avid reader. I would finish books very quickly from that point on, and in the first year that I did this, I read probably 15 novels in that 1 year, and I've just kept reading ever since. I love to do it. I love to watch what I'm reading in my mind like it's a movie through my imagination. When I was a child, I had a very strong imagination, so much so that I would run around outside and pretend I was on another planet, like fighting aliens or something, and it would feel as though I was really there. I would see, like, I wouldn't see the trees and stuff of my backyard. I would instead see this fictional place that I had transported myself to. I would slip into daydreams so vividly, whether I was at school or riding in the car or whatever, that no longer would I see what was in front of me, even though my eyes were seeing it. My third eye, if you will, or my brain was processing a different image that it itself was generating, and I would create whole stories in my mind that I would plan to turn into a movie or a book or something. But at that point in my life, I didn't have any sort of drive or follow through, so I would never get it done. As I've gotten older, though, I've developed those skills, and now I actually sit down and I write the story, or I create whatever it is I want to do. I definitely think the screens and all this stuff is a huge problem today that people need to try and step aside from, take some time off of, and we need to slow back down. We need to be more reflective and more thoughtful and spend more time in our minds as opposed to on the internet. And so, very ironic as I'm posting this video on the internet, but I know it'll reach people because of this, right? So anyway, I definitely think men need to start reading again. If lots of men think, well, there's no books for me to read, well, partially you're right in today's publishing climate, but that's because men don't read. If there's not an audience for it, why would they make it? If it's not going to generate income, why would they put it out there? So without having a dedicated base of men that want to read books, they're not going to publish books that are targeted towards men. So I highly advise some people to start reading. I would definitely, if you're looking for some recommendations, I would say The Dark Tower is a great one, which a good friend of mine who watches this channel suggested to me. Dune is okay. I'm just kind of reading it at this point because I already started it, but after seeing the new movies, I was a bit disappointed by the books. I gotta be clear, I really like books where the writing effectively paints an image in my mind, and if they don't do that, I don't appreciate it so much. So it needs to be very descriptive and very, I need to know what I'm looking at. It can't just be some new stuff. It's very good when characters are written well and when there's a lot of focus on the characters and what they're feeling and stuff, but some things today focus on that way too heavily to the point where the setting and the action and the things that are happening are not written as well, and so all we're sort of getting is this oh, this is what I'm feeling now, or or different relationships and things like that. Yeah, so definitely those. Conan the Barbarian stories by Robert E. Howard, very good. I would just advise some men to start trying to read. And of course, I could use this to market my own novel that I wrote that people should go and check out. So if they're looking for a book to use as a way to start reading, go and check that one out. I've been told I do a very good job with being descriptive and creating vivid imagery for the reader. So that might be a good choice. But yeah, so that's an option. Ultimately, yeah, I just think more men need to start reading. It's just such a rewarding experience, and we need to get away from the modern distractions, which I'll make another video about at some point for sure. But I highly recommend trying to sit down and read a book. Well, that's all I got for you guys right now, so I'll see you in the next video.
A humble priest sent on a mission by his God. A lonely thief trying to find her way in the world. A wizard's apprentice on a quest for liberation. Follow Aldenor, Naya, and Anna as they venture through Erdania and uncover the hidden truth of the Covenant of Renewal, a dying religion with a gray morality. Read the hit book, The Price of Renewal, by Austin Buffington, available on Amazon.